sun, I hear another train.
Moving in next, the book is called Pride Aside, A Father's Journey Through His Son's Addiction. The author is Steve Hutton, and Steve and I have worked together on and off for a few years. I can remember not even knowing what was going on in Steve and his family's life, but was following just the football pursuits and accomplishments through his son, Ben. He has two sons, Ben and Michael, and been married 28 years to his beautiful bride, Joni. And I think, Steve, I got a chance to read the book. You were kind enough to send it to me. Steve has worked with the PGA for a number of years, doing events in Mississippi, his home state. He launched Momentum events, doing men's and marriage conferences, and I think that's crucial to know that, mega churches across Southeast. I was honored to be part of some of those with Steve Farrar, who, of course, has written many books, but best known for the book Point Man. As a matter of fact, I've said many times every single man should read the book Point Man. And I actually went back and reread it this past summer while I was down at the beach with the family, and it was as convicting then as it was the first time I read it. Also now still works booking Steve Farrar, and also has added to his arsenal Charles Billingsley, who you've heard on the show a number of times. And Steve, when I read this book, and I'll just tell you what I took away from it. I think there's people listening right now and watching the show. I mean, here you are, your family, you are out doing conferences, so you know what to do as the spiritual leader of your home. You have a great marriage. You got two great kids. You guys are involved in your church. You're strong in your faith. You've been successful. You're making a difference. You've got this son who has incredible athletic ability, which every dad dreams of, and then. Because I think a lot of people have this feeling, me being one of them, if I'm just being brutal, of thinking it won't happen to us.
Right.
If we do everything right, then we won't end up with this story. It won't happen to us.
Right.
And I got to tell you, right out of the gate, that when I turn the first few pages of the book and you create that opening scene of someone who knows you looking at you and thinks, why are you here at this terrible scene? And it's your son.
Right.
So that's just a sprinkle, and we won't tell the whole book today. But the bottom line is, you and your family, even today, as we know, with addiction's never over. If you have someone you love or you yourself go down this road, but you guys have been through it.
We have, and if Ben walked in the door right now. And thank you guys for dressing up for me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we do what we can.
We really spruced it up.
Yes, we did. Yes, we do.
But if Ben walked in right now, you would think that he was a rep for a station or a salesman of some sort. I mean, he's a clean-cut guy. He's winsome. He's vivacious. He's a great, great guy. And there's something though in his life that causes him to just fall off for sometimes it's a period of weeks and sometimes it's a period of months, and we've been struggling with this for about 5 years now. He left to play college football and went to 2 different universities, and that's really kind of when it got bad. And for 5 years we have spent about $250,000 basically trying to keep Ben alive, and there's hope though in that. So many parents. First, they start trying to figure out, what did we do wrong? They're embarrassed. They don't want people to know about it. And then when people do start to find out about it, there's so much hurt and pain because a lot of other people's reaction are, well, I wonder what was going on over in that house.
Right.
And I mean, our younger son, I know that there's a couple of instances where he couldn't have a friend come over and spend the night because a parent was wondering what's going on over in that house.
I got to say, I came away from this book very impressed with Michael.
Yeah.
I mean, very impressed, because I think one of the things you touched on is when you have the kid or kids that are doing it right, and it'd be real easy when they see all this focused on the kid that's doing it all wrong,
right,
and then they're over here saying, hey, I'm doing everything right. I thought you touching on that part was pretty crucial too.
And Michael's doing great.
Not
today,
that he's perfect, but I'm just talking about he didn't have these same problems.
Exactly. And we had the same rules with both boys, and we had the same curfews and the same values, and going to the same church, and obviously it was two different paths. So, for Ben, I think if he were here today, I think that he would tell you it's been a spiritual issue for him. Now it's different for everybody, I'm sure, but
that's honest.
But for him, and that's where he's at right now. He's in a program right now. He has decided to go away for a year and a half, and he's really trying to figure out some of the spiritual roots, and because we all know that Christ can absolutely reach in and take something away, but he can also maybe prolong some things a little bit longer for his timing, so that he can have a little different glory in the end.
So the lessons learned, and he's always been glorified through pain and suffering. Can you touch on this one moment when I was reading the book? Because I know right now people are listening, and they're like, okay, what should I be looking for?
Yeah.
There was a moment you talked about, I think he was 11 or 12, the picture, the father-son picture with Little League Baseball. Tell us a little bit about that moment.
Well, I will try to get through this as best I can.
Yeah, I understand.
And it's difficult to sometimes bring some of this back. He was 12 years old. We were at baseball game, and picture day at baseball games or soccer games or whatever. The photographer comes and he puts the tent up, and you go over and you take your individual shots, and then the team gets together and everybody makes sure that their left knee is up and their right knee is down, and take that group shot. Well, it was that day. Beautiful day, 70 degrees, blue skies, and the coach and his son had their individual picture taken together. And I just thought, now how cool is that? We've never had a picture like that made with each other. And I walked over to Ben and put my arm around him and said, hey, do you see what Coach Joe did? And how would you like to have a picture made? And Ben spun out from under my arm and just gave me a look of disgust like I've never seen before, and said, go away. And he remembers that moment. Ben has read the book. Ben suggested I write the book. And he remembers that moment, and he can't explain it. But that's kind of the first time that I saw him begin to pull away in a father-son relationship. And I knew at that exact moment that our relationship was going to be different from that point forward.
Yeah, and you didn't really know what was going on, but that was so abnormal.
It was.
Because, it was the typical, I've read the book.
Yeah.
It is the typical, hey, I'm involved with my kids' little league. He's good, which, by the way, that's the most fun daddying there is if your kid's good. Yeah. You know what I mean? And everything's going great, and we do this together, and you're probably thinking, could there be any better quality time? I'm doing the things we always talk about. Don't give them stuff. Give them time. Get involved with them. Let them know you love them, which you from what I'm reading in this book and Ben agrees, you were doing all those things.
Oh, and from 8th grade on, I would put on some conferences in other cities, and I would sit down in the summer, and I would take his football schedule and Michael's football or baseball schedule or whatever, and I would put those on the calendar, and then I would book everything I did around them. So from 8th grade all the way through his senior year, I never missed one football game. And except for his senior year all-star, because I didn't think about the fact he might be an all-star, I better put that game in there. And so I joined a deer camp. I wasn't a hunter, but both the boys, they wanted to hunt, so joined a deer camp so we could do that together. And Michael and I would go and spend all these times together, and Ben just all of a sudden, he didn't want to go unless there was a friend with him, or it was just a distancing. And he can't explain it, I can't explain it, but that was just kind of one of the first signs that we saw that he was trying to figure out how to be independent, how to be who he was going to end up being, and he didn't know who he wanted to be.
We'll come back more with Steve Hutton. It's called Pride Aside. We'll talk about that title because the title says a lot as a family, because we all want to give this beautiful postcard picture that we got our act together and everything's going well. And there's a moment with one of the year's Christmas cards you sent out that I thought was very profound. We'll come back. The book's available wherever books are sold. We have it all linked right there at rickandbubba.com to get your copy. We'll be back.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
Steve Hutton is with us. He's written the book, Pride Aside, A Father's Journey Through His Son's Addiction. His son Ben, a great athlete, raised in a very strong Christian home, involved in church and doing everything the way that we would think it should be done, and then became addicted to drugs and this ride that the family went on. This was the times that you think throughout the book that, and those of you that are dealing with anyone who has that addiction, I'm sure the book will speak to that. The roller coaster ride, Steve, is unbelievable, and it's just grueling. How many times you think, okay, this is it, we've got it. He's back on his feet. I was looking at the time where Houston Nutt gives him a chance to come back to football. At one time, he was timed running a
4.2740,
and was had an incredible high school career. Was going to be definitely, if not a receiver / return guy for Ole Miss. And I remember reading in the book. Okay, we got him set up. He's back in college football. He's got a second chance. All he's got to do is follow the rules, and we have weathered the storm. And then.
And I think that's what so many parents, when you start seeing some signals, when you start seeing some signs, as a parent, that's the last thing that you want to admit to yourself. You're just thinking, okay, it's a bump in the road. If I can figure out as a parent to put him in a winning position, if I can figure out as a parent to a way to help him so that things are going well, opportunities are there for him, then he'll just put all that aside. He'll focus and he'll go do the things that he needs to do. And what a parent never wants to imagine is that addiction is a real disease. At first, it's a choice. There's no question about that. But at some point in time, for some people, it becomes something that they cannot control. But from the parent standpoint, you don't see that at first. And so, I think I'm to blame a lot for dragging it out. We're going to put him here. We're going to get him a car. We're going to get him at a different school. We're going to change an environment. He's going to do well. He's going to thrive. But it was just a different place for him to use.
Until you attack the problem.
Right.
And that is this move toward, now, where was the point where he made the first choice? Where did it first go off the
we've got a saying in our house. We call my wife Joni, who I think's listening this morning. The boys would call her Snoopy Sniffer growing up, because you aren't going to come home with alcohol on your breath or cigarette smoke on your clothes or any of that, because Mama could smell it before you got in the driveway.
Right.
So, and Ben knew that. Well, about 8th, 9th grade, 10th grade, the first time he ever wanted to try a little something, he started right off with prescription medication out of somebody else's cabinet. I mean, that's where he started. And he did that knowing he couldn't come home with alcohol on his breath.
Right.
So, 8th, 9th, 10th grade is where he did one or two things, nothing serious, but just a couple of things. And then, but he did pretty well through high school. I think he has come back and told us now he snuck off and did a few things here and there whenever he was spending the night somewhere on a trip or something like that. But it really was in college. It was really when he transferred from Southern Miss to Ole Miss, and that's when it started.
When I took away from this, I teach 12th grade. I've got teenagers. I've already had 2 teenagers come through and kids in their early 20s. One of the things I took away from it is you're not going to get your children to have a strong spiritual life and become a follower of Christ vicariously through you. You can't do it.
You can't.
And I mean, there comes a point they have to choose for themselves their own personal relationship with Christ, and it has to mean more to them than the world.
That's right.
And you can keep saying that. You can keep trying to teach that. And I know a lot of parents feel helpless. We all do to a point. And I know you reached the point with this with Ben, and it had to be one of the scariest moments where you said no more.
Yeah.
We've cleaned it up for the last time.
Yeah, we had been through 3 or 4 rehabs probably by that time, and it was, you're battling. You want to keep him alive, but are you enabling the process by doing that? By making sure that he has the food that he needs or the clothes that he needs, et cetera? Are you enabling the process instead of finally getting to the point where he just has to go? And that one night where I finally, through my wife's help, was able to say, okay, I drew him a map. He was so high, I took him to a rehab. They wouldn't take him. And they said, we suggest he goes to an emergency room. He had taken 6 or 7 Xanax at that time, which would kill me or you.
Right.
Come to find out later on the next day, he actually had taken 13
Good
by
grief.
the time the night was over. And we started getting these phone calls throughout the night. He went to one ER. He was kicked out of there. He ended up on the streets in the worst part of Jackson. He called me at 2 in the morning, and he said, Dad, don't freak out, but I've been shot in the head. I said, really? I said, okay, well, where are you? And he said, well, I'm at the hospital. I said, okay, the same one you were at 3 hours ago? He said, no, I think this is a different one. I said, how'd you get there? He said, ambulance. I said, well, so you're inside? There's doctors, there's nurses? Yeah, I'm inside. And I said, well, good, they'll take care of you. If you can find your way back to rehab, give me a call. I'll come pay for it.
Those nights, you because those late night phone calls, and you said you'd even got to the point you knew when to go to the guest room, that one was coming. Yep. And then you finally let him call as many times as he wanted to, no matter how severe the situation, and you wouldn't go.
It was it.
Wow.
The only answer was, do you want treatment? So if the call was for anything else, if it was for fuel, if it was for whatever, the answer was no. But if you want treatment, if you go check yourself in, then I'll come down there and I'll write another check.
And back to a comment earlier, in case you missed it, you think you got to that point later than you really should have.
I do.
Yeah.
And it's different for everybody. But from a parent, you don't want to see the worst in your child. You want to see the best. So you've got this cloud over you where you're just not ignoring the situation, but you don't believe it yourself. And but finally, you just have to get to that point, and that's Ben still struggles. He's at a treatment center today, like I said, but he'll be there a year and a half. It's really more of a seminary for addicts. But he's still trying not only to deal with the addiction side, but just trying to figure out the spiritual side, and is that part of where it started?
Which is key.
I think so. There's a time in the Bible where Jesus, in the book of John, gives some very difficult teachings, and the disciples start to leave. They're like, hey, I don't know that I'm signed up for this. And Jesus asked Peter, he said, are you going to leave? And Peter said, to whom else would we go? You have the word, you're eternal life. And Ben has been through some serious hard teachings lately. And so he's at that point. Where's he going to turn? And he's trying to make that decision.
And all you can do is pray him down now.
That's it.
At this point.
Yeah.
The book's called Pride Aside, A Father's Journey Through His Son's Addiction, and you go to rickandbubba.com. It is a story that, and like I say, I'm not going to be getting an award for how many books I've read, but when I started reading this one, I went through it in about a day and a half. And for some of you, you'll be done with it in the same day. It's that gripping, and we'll come back and we'll spend one more segment with Steve. If you have any questions, 866-WE-BE-BIG. More of the Rick and Bubba Show right after this.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
This book with Steve, and then I'll let some of you want to ask him questions, because unfortunately this is going on all over this country, and I'm probably all over this audience right now, dealing with someone you love, or maybe yourself, with drug addiction and what it does to the person and to all who are connected and love them, and the hard choices that everybody has to make. And I remember going through, I've talked about this, and we've talked about this over and over in the conferences that you've done with Steve Farrar. We've talked about this, the men's conferences, marriage conferences. Men and women are equal, but they're not same. Husband and wife are equal, but they're not same. Dad and mom are equal, but they're not same. And I know through what our family has been through, which was different, but still very hard, watching, you have to understand that the way we're going through it as husbands and dads, it isn't the same way they're going through it as moms and wives.
Right.
So let's talk a little bit about the dynamic from your wife's point of view.
Yeah, it was interesting because we both would go through seasons where she was wanting to be the firm, heavy hand, and I was wanting to let's try to help put him in a better position. And then 6 months would go by, and something bad would happen again, and we would flip flop. And I was like, I'm done. It's not I'm out. I'm done it all. And she's like, no, one more chance. Let's move him to let's try this treatment or whatever. And so it's amazing how, for us anyway, we were able to flip flop like that. And I think that was good because he was feeling a sense of, I don't want to use the word pressure, but he was feeling both love and direction at the same time.
Take us to the Christmas card. I thought, because I do think sometimes we all just get weary of this, having to think we have to put on this persona that we are the Norman Rockwell perfect family.
Yeah. Well, we love doing Christmas cards. I grew up going to my grandparents' house, and they had hundreds of them from all over the country, thumbtacked to their walls, and I just thought that was cool. And so we love doing Christmas cards. And we got to, I think Ben was in rehab number 2 at this particular point in time. And I just jokingly said to Joni, I said, so how are we going to do the family Christmas card? We're going to go stand in front of the rehab sign?
right,
yeah.
And so we joked back and forth, well, maybe we can just do individual shots or something or other. And I made a joke. I said, well, we could just take individual shots and make a little montage like the Brady Bunch, the little tic-tac-toe Brady Bunch thing. Mm-hmm. And we counted up all of our dogs and fish, and we realized we had enough Huttons in the household that we could be the Brady Bunch. So we took pictures of people looking left and right like Jan and Marcia, and up and down like Bobby and Peter, and put those on a Christmas card so that the picture was of the Brady Bunch perfect family, but then within the description underneath is that we're no longer trying to be America's perfect family.
Take us to the moment you walk in and your wife is going through photos.
Well, this was right before one of the rehabs, and Ben, he was one of those scat back football players, 160 pounds. You may remember Dexter McCluster, who now is who's with Titans, I think now, and Ben in same size as Dexter, and he 160 pounds. Anyway, he was down to probably, I'm guessing, 125, 130 pounds. He came home. He was white, pale. We just knew. And then we went through an episode while he was home where he called, and it was 2 a.m, and he was trying to find a gun to kill somebody, and it was just a bizarre night. And I came home from that episode, and I walked into the master bathroom. And, we've got that dresser like a lot of families do with 10,000 family photos over the years that one of these days we're going to get around to putting them in a book,
Right.
Yeah.
And Joni had pulled out about 6 of the drawers and was sitting in the bathroom floor, and the drawers were surrounding her. And she was looking through all of our photos of Ben from birth all the way up through high school, college football, up to present day. And I looked in her lap, and she had a manila envelope and a black Sharpie. And it had the words, Ben's funeral, written on the envelope. And she was trying to pick out the pictures while she still had the presence of mind to display at his funeral.
Wow. And I can't imagine from a husband and a dad's point of view, you knew right then that I don't guess there's anybody that hates drug addiction more than y'all do.
And nobody hates it more than Ben does.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's what, he doesn't want to do this. He's trying to figure out why. Why can he go 8 months and have a good job and have a car note now and bought his first car for the first time, and then in a matter of 3 days, all of a sudden be passed out with a needle in his arm in the backyard of a house with 11 police officers holding him down.
Yeah.
How can he do that? And nobody wants it to be over more than him. And there's so many people out there that your first impression, okay, it's a punk kid. Well, he's not a punk kid. He has gone down this path. He is fighting a spiritual battle. And when he's in active relapse, he's fighting a chemical battle as well. So nobody wants it to be over more than him. And that's what, in my opinion, that's what my Heavenly Father did for me. He kept giving me chance after chance. He would come 99 steps towards me, but I had to take that one step towards him. And so that's what we've tried to do as a family. We have tried to, when it's appropriate, take those 99 steps towards him and show him that love. and he's trying to figure out how to take that one step back.
You talked a lot in the book, and I remember about how drug addiction, alcohol addiction, they're all in the same, the disease part of it, but you make it real clear, though that appears to be correct in what you've experienced and you just explained, but there's a choice that takes you down that road.
Right.
And even you were talking about when someone goes sober for 2 years,
right?
You think choice then comes back. You've chosen to go back to that.
And,
because a lot of people go back and forth with this, the choice versus the chemical addiction. They're both in play.
They are both in play. At first, it's obviously a choice. There's no question about that. The question after that is, why do some people do the same thing? You line 10 people up. They all do the same thing for a 3-week period of time. One person can't stop. The other 9 can. Well, that leads a little bit of credence to the fact that, okay, maybe there is a chemical disease, something or other that's in play there. But and you get so many varying opinions, and that's what's so frustrating in trying to treat this. The only answer that I can flat out give you is there is no answer. It's my opinion that when you've been sober for a period of time, it kind of goes back to choice again.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of people that have a different opinion, but choice plays a factor. But the most frustrating thing, and the thing that I can tell you, the only thing that is the cure is to never do it for the first time.
Right. I mean, and I took 2 things away from this, and I 100% agree with you. If you don't ever choose to go down that road, it doesn't really matter how you're going to respond to it.
Right.
That's where people make fun sometimes on the alcohol side of those of us that come from a Baptist background. Well, the Bible doesn't say that you can't have a drink. Well, I got one news for you. I got news for you. I've seen what alcohol does to people, and if you never take that first drink, you ain't never gonna have that problem.
Right.
Okay. So then the other is this. So it may not be required, but I think it's still a pretty good plan. The other thing is that you make clear if you make the choice and you do become addicted, the only way you're going to overcome it is the power of Jesus.
That's it.
And if it doesn't have a spiritual element to it, you're flushing money.
And there's so many. We have, through all of the traditional rehab programs that Ben has been through, we have met so many young men and some ladies who are down a similar path, and some of them have even come to church with us, and we've been able to mentor and talk to them. And they're, out of all of them, I think there's one that I can just say, now he's okay, and it's because he came to a point of surrender. I talk about him in the book. We were at a family week, and all these addicts were telling their story, and I just, I didn't believe any of the junk coming out of their mouths. But when this guy spoke, he could have told me the sky was pink, and I would have believed it, because he was done. He was surrendering, and because of that surrender, I think he's going to be in good shape.
There's nothing. I mean, Christ says, "Look, there's problems out there, but I've overcome them all."
That's it.
Well, and I think it's important that you made that point. And I also think that those who are going through it, and there's some calls there, you also caution people a little bit that some of these rehab places, they siphon every dime you ever had. And, you talk about it in the book, so if they read it, they're going to see it.
Right.
And you're not pointing fingers at any place, but some of this, just because it says "come here, we'll help you," some of it seems to be set up to take a lot of your money and little else.
Well, there's everybody thinks that their method is the method. But if their method was the method, there wouldn't be a 85-90% relapse rate.
Right, yeah. Right.
And so you really have to do the research. And that's the thing is parents, they panic. And they want to do something fast, and they're just willing to believe anything.
And then that's understood.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, we'll come back. We got a couple of callers standing by that we'll let you maybe answer a couple of their questions, and then we'll wrap it up. Check the website today. Pride Aside is the name of it. Steve Hutton, the author, a grueling story about a family's continued journey, and hopefully we see it on the right track right now. And you can get it at rickandbubba.com. Questions for Steve Hutton. We come back at 866-WE-BE-BIG.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.
Let's go to the phones. Questions for Steve Hutton. He's written the book. We've got the link how you can get the book there at rickandbubba.com. It's not in stores, but it is available on all the Amazon.com, and then straight from his website. Also, if you want to find out where he's speaking across the country, you can do that, or book him to speak at your event or your church. You can do that too. The book's called Pride Aside, A Father's Journey Through His Son's Addiction. We've interviewed him for the first part of the hour, and we'll take some of your phone calls to him after. To an anonymous caller out of Oxford, standing by. You're on with Steve Hutton. Go right ahead.
Yes, I'm a mother of a child who's an addict. He's been to rehab about 3 or 4 times. And there's one particular one in Oxford that is one that just takes your money, and there's drugs inside the rehab. And that, to me, that's sad. Why are you trying, you're supposed to help these men and women.
So what do you think? I mean, that would obviously be, to me, a red flag if they have drugs there.
Well, yeah.
Well, probably not something you want to go to.
Right.
Allegedly reported.
Allegedly reported. Let's go to Robin in Missouri. Robin, you're on with Steve. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to say first that I wish I would have had a book as maybe a map as to what to expect. My son got on meth. He started making it, selling it. I knew something was wrong. I would ask him, what are you doing? Nothing, Mom, nothing. He graduated from a Christian school. Might not have had the best family, but I tried. Finally, he got into some things to where I heard that the law was looking for him on Christmas Eve. I found him, and I said, get in the car. He was, out of his head. Yeah. And he got in the car, and I said, son, I need to know, did you do these things that you've been accused of? He said, dropped his head and said, yeah, Mom, I did. I said, the only thing that I can do is to take you and turn you in.
Right.
The hardest thing I ever did in my life. I had been praying for him. I had anointed his room, his everything, and prayed for him. The women in my prayer group prayed for him.
Well,
whenever I took him and whenever I turned him in, he had done some very bad things.
There's a lot of thanks so much for calling.
Yeah.
There's a lot of I was speaking with the DA down in Andalusia, Alabama, and they're bringing me in March to do something there, and he was like, you're the type dad, you got Ben out of all these different situations. He said, you're the type dad that just drives me nuts. And I said, well, let me tell you, at first, a parent's mindset is, if I can just take the bad consequences away, then once they wake up, then they're not going to have that hanging over them. But there comes a point in time where obviously they need to face whatever consequence it is. And as a parent, if you don't allow them to start facing those consequences, then you're being part of the problem as well.
It's funny you said that, and your book had me ready for this answer. I was doing an event the other night, and they were asking questions, and it was all about what we face now as parents. That's what the whole night was about. And a woman said to me in the audience, she said, and you could tell she was having a hard time holding together, my child just continues to make the wrong decisions, even though we've told them we've done everything we thought we were supposed to do. What do you do about that? And after reading this book, I said, and you just said it, and it was difficult, I said, you let them suffer the consequences of those decisions and pray it doesn't kill them.
Right. That's exactly right.
And you pray it doesn't take their life.
Right.
Because until they see the results of these decisions, I've got a dad that's very involved in ministry, and he said one of the hardest things he had to do is, he said, my son called one time, I got him set up in a college, and he made some bad decisions. He got himself kicked out of college, and he calls me, says he got nowhere to live, and I had to say, well, find a safe place to sleep in your car.
That's right.
I mean, I had it set up, and you've squandered it. Now you're going to have to get yourself back on your feet. And that was a little different because it didn't involve an addiction like this, where and that son is doing well today and is happily married, but you talked to that dad. That was still one of the hardest. Those decisions are not easy.
Absolutely. Another Christian leader that you and I both know, he bailed his son out of jail one night and got a phone call while they were in the parking lot from one of his other Christian leader friends, and he said, hey, go put him back in. Go put him back in. And they turned around and put him back in. And that was the start of his recovery.
Yeah, and I think the message you and I talked about in the break, I remember my mother talking to me when I went through the dark years of my stupid and young life when I made bad choices. And I made those choices because I wanted to begin with. I just decided that's what I wanted to do, knowing that I'd been raised differently and even believing in Jesus the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I didn't follow Jesus, but I believed in him. And and I remember her saying to me one day that she would always love me, and this is how my Heavenly Father is as well, but I don't approve of you.
Right.
You know, you're not going to be allowed to bring that here.
That's right.
And we don't approve of the way you're living. We love you. We'll always love you, but I don't approve of you. And I think that sometimes we misunderstand that saying that you will not allow something or let your children suffer the consequences of their choices, that's not a lack of love.
It's not.
I mean, it's a lack of approval.
And, you know, so many people, I had a call yesterday from someone in North Alabama, and they just found me on the website, I guess, and, you know, same situation that all the different callers have just called about. But I asked him the question because you know, they're paying for a cell phone, the kid has a car, and I said, let me ask you a question. Would you take $40 and go buy some crack and give it to your child?
Right.
And they said, no, I wouldn't do that. And I said, well, you just did.
Right.
Just by doing the phone and the car.
Yeah, if they have to go, get them in a situation where, you know. Well, Steve, it's great. Thank you. I know it was hard. I know it's difficult, but it's making a difference already, and it will continue to do so. Sorry you had to go through it. Yeah. Sorry you're still going through it to a degree. Praying that Ben comes through this, but thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Steve.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba.